Oopsie.
Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Flow Show. Today we are going to talk about empathic civilization. Yes, we are all empathic. So stay tuned for a deep dive kind of show.
Tim Glover.
Yes, we forgot to introduce ourselves. Sara Felice here, and we have
Tim Glover here, which is so unusual because usually it's Tim Glover and Sara Felice, and today it's Sara Felice and Tim Glover.
And let's intro us, Tim.
There's our intro.
Beautiful.
Beautifully done.
Beautifully done. Welcome, viewers. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We like to engage always. And today we're going to talk about being empathic. Yes, all of us are empathic. What does this mean to be empathic, Tim Glover?
Well, I'm reminded. So there's this big book. Does that go upside down?
Perfect.
Empathic Civilization. Jeremy Rifkin wrote this just a couple of years ago. There's the charming Jeremy Rifkin. And Jeremy Rifkin is a consultant and has been a consultant to nations. So he's been a consultant to Germany in particular, and then he was in the States for a time. And he's a team of people that help with actually managing change and transformation. And he's been one of the people that's out front in that. So, and he's very wordy, like he gets into it in a significant way. But in 1991, some guys, it's always guys, actually discovered that we have this thing called mirror neuron, and it's right up in the front of our, like it's behind the executive center, but it's right in the middle. And what it does is it enables every single person on the planet, everyone who's a human being, to actually experience the feelings and sensations of other people. And so this discovery actually helped us understand that we're all empathic. And I've been introduced into the world of spiritual awareness, where some people are empaths and some people are sociopaths. No, just kidding. But in fact, it's not some people. We are all empathic. We all stream creative intelligence, which is information plus energy. And what that tends to do for us is start to realize this whole oops thing that we've talked about before is most definitely a function of bandwidth. And if you look at the scale of consciousness, at the lower end of the bandwidth is all shame and guilt and freak outedness, which is the fear response. In the middle is acceptance and courage. And at the top end is love, peace, and joy. And love, peace, and joy, there's not so many people having the love, peace, and joy experience because you have to be fairly evolved in your inner world to be able to hang at that level. But that's a big bandwidth player. And on the scale of consciousness, they say like at the really, really high end, it's 0.001 at the real high level, and it's maybe 0.2 and then 2%, 3%. But where 83% of the population is down in the pyramid of fear. So they're feeling right now with COVID and this pandemic, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of churn. There's a lot of people screaming at people in grocery stores. There's a lot of people. We just had, we had a big wild situation out in Nova Scotia where there was a mass shooting. Like this type of phenomena happens as a function of people not being able to process all the information and energy that's going on, and they are empathic, so they can feel this, and it overloads their system. Mm-hmm. And so his point, in a rather lengthy way, and it's unbelievable how much research these books have, is that it is the opportunity to actually build this, what he calls wisdom of crowds. So the wisdom of crowds, you want to make sure that if you're actually getting an ecosystem together, you're actually really conscious at what particular vibrational frequency are you actually gathering that crowd together. And typically they mimic yours. So if in fact we're feeling depressed today on this particular flow show, then we're actually going to be attuned to a lower frequency, which is actually more of a low vibrational frequency. And for my own self, my heart is fairly heavy today. So I'll just actually, I dialogue about, yes, my heart is just heavy because it is. Mm-hmm. And people on this particular show will actually feel that, whether they can actually isolate that that's what's going on or not, is the question. And I think that's what we as a civilization are now evolving to is this awareness that we're all connected. We can all feel each other. And if we do not take responsibility for the fact that we can feel each other, what we end up doing is oopsing, owning other people's stream. And wherever that stream is, the idea from an evolutionary standpoint is to get to a higher stream. Like that's the evolutionary, that's the staircase of evolution. You move from a relatively some bandwidth frequency to an expanded bandwidth frequency. Mm-hmm. Sara, you're up next.
Okay, I'm saying hello to Vicky. Hello, Vicky.
Thanks. Hello, Vicky.
And if you are joining us now or in the future, let us know what your experience of being empathic is. And so simple terms, like what is an empathic is you can feel other people's feelings and emotions. And like from just speaking to my story, not really, they don't really teach us this in our education system, but that's something that we have. When you're around others, and especially like family, I didn't realize, like I'm picking up on what they're feeling, and then I change my response to please others. That's kind of been one of my deeper journeys with being empathic, but also, I think maybe we all have different levels of sensitivity. And when big events like this do happen on the planet, we feel them so deeply. And, change, like every single person right now is going through some kind of change, whether it's because of a death and you're letting a person go, or it's a death of yourself and you're letting an old part of yourself go. There's that ability for us to take the emotion, like be emotionally intelligent and process our emotions is so important, and to be able to have those conversations with people as well. And I can just say from my past, because I felt so much as a young child, I numbed myself, and for years I couldn't even cry, and I just put up these walls basically because it just became too painful. And so the journey of rediscovering our emotional bodies is so important in terms of like what you're saying, in terms of raising our vibration and our frequency, to be able to hold. Because in some ways, like I believe that this, the COVID thing, we're going to get through it. Humanity is so resilient, but there's going to be a lot more change coming as we move forward. And if we can show up in society and communities and really speak what we're feeling, we will grow and evolve, like you were saying.
Yeah. I'm in talking about being empathic. The interesting thing is if I having spent lots of time actually figuring this whole thing and the mechanics of it, the thing that actually science wants to actually focus on is the mirror neuron is in our head. Okay, so everything through a science lens is head centric and head coherent. And as when we look at and we define ourselves as a machine that's run by our head, then what we all focus on with the mirror neuron and what they call is the empathy or mirror neuron is that this must be all happening from my head. I must be actually picking up stuff from people in my head, but that's not exactly how OOPS goes, and that's not how streaming goes. Streaming doesn't actually start with the head. Streaming starts with the heart. And the Heart Math is an institution, so not-for-profit in the States, who's done a lot of research on the fact that we feel things with the heart sometimes 5, 10, 20 seconds in the research that they've done, 20 seconds before it shows up in our eyes. So if we're flashing pictures, we have the person wired up in the head and they're flashing pictures. Here's a happy picture. And, boof, you get the smile. And then here's a dangerous picture of a snake coming at you. And then you turn the picture off. What they discovered is that the heart will engage in what the picture is going to be 20 seconds before the actual picture shows up. The heart is intuitive.
Yeah.
And so the empathic neuron is, the idea is the heart is what actually oops first. We actually own other people's, we own the stream. So the streaming comes through the heart, then it goes to the head second and the gut third. And so this is a really significant breakthrough in science, because science historically always thought we made decisions with our head. And so decision making for leaders and decision making, communication, problem solving, everything else is always focused on the head. Whereas what the new science is actually helping us understand is that it's the heart that actually solves the challenges. Now, if you actually leave the heart and you move into the head, you end up overwhelming the circuits. The circuits cannot cope with the amount of fear that's going on the planet right now.
Right.
So this is why we're having mental illness and mental wipeouts.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we have engagement as well.
Mm-hmm. If you think about it, if we're just engaging at the level of the head, we're always going to be using old responses, and also creating situations that are coming from something old. Even that perfect example about people can have a sense of the picture coming before it actually is presented. So because we haven't really allowed ourselves as a species yet to really understand the power that we have in the heart, we've been blocking it before we can see even new opportunities, because we're engaged at that level of the head, even as you just described.
And so it's,
yeah.
Sorry, were you done? Because I don't want to be cutting you off.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. So there is this, again, these days I've been throwing myself into research. I'm talking to a lot of PhDs in, organizational psychology and everything else. And so their discipline is from a head perspective. And so there's research as to why is it that we actually we elevate so many incompetent men to positions of power. So the dialogue that's going on right now is, it's historically, why do we not actually get women in positions of power? Well, and it's because if we're actually focusing from the head, what the head's trying to do to actually maintain coherence is it picks up a whole bunch of patterns in the subconscious level between the ages of 0 and 7, which is our parents. Mm-hmm. So we picked up all our parents' stuff, and the whole head dynamic is meant to find and attract scenarios that match the scenario you had between the ages 0 and 7. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood is that between the ages 0 and 7, you had a man in your relationship who was the dominant patriarch, and that patriarch was actually fairly vocal. And through society's lenses, and this has been dominant for thousands of years, that we're going to actually go and elect or put in place a leader who actually is coherent with our expectation of what a leader is. So leader's narcissistic, self-focused, and very dominant, has an agenda, and is not particularly self-reflective. But we end up, when we actually are not aware of how the whole heart, brain, as well as gut works, we tend to unconsciously vote for those types of people who remind us unconsciously of the patterns that we had in the subconscious when we were really young. Mm-hmm. So we actually have the situation where not a lot of women, even though they're way better at leadership than men, especially in crisis, because they're more heart-centered. But we don't elevate them and we don't invest in them, because all of the investment typically tends to come from the head. The investment decisions, the decisions at the polls in electing people. How many friggin' prime ministers and presidents have we had that are men versus women? Like, it's huge. Well, this is just a function of unconscious bias. And the idea, even now, and Jeremy Rifkin's work as well, it's still head-based. Mm-hmm. As opposed to where the information comes in is through the heart first, and there's no agenda with the heart. There's no history. There's no unconscious bias with the heart.
Yeah.
All the unconscious bias comes in at the head level.
Yeah. And I think perhaps we needed this global crisis, in order to have the women kind of naturally rise, and even men who've been balancing their feminine side.
Right.
It's not to say that we should only have female leaders, but leaders that have embraced that feminine side of themselves and have had their hearts, open and expanded. And this is really what the essence of the energy age is. Really, is the energy age is that ability, that empathic ability to feel your way through and navigate from that space where you're being sensitive to what is the energy that I'm feeling, right? Like, are these leaders that I typically would have, given my power away? Like, how does that actually make me feel? And this is something else that I believe we're really waking up to as a society, at least anybody who's, maybe not even had any awareness, to start questioning things and to really understand, we are in the energy age. We're all energy, and we can feel what's truly resonating with us and what isn't. And I even there had a situation over the last couple of days where I could see myself blocking myself because I was coming from ahead. Well, typically, this is how I react or how I respond, right? Versus allowing myself to feel energetically, oh, well, this actually feels in alignment and feels, this becomes our navigation. And I think with women who maybe have, and I could speak for myself, who had fears about rising and putting their voice out there, and maybe we talk about the tall poppy and go against just whatever has been classic logic. What the crisis is, like that mama bear, like, okay, enough is enough, like now is the time to step up with the heart and lead from that space and voice that opposition, which, yeah, I think, it's looking at the perspective of this is what we've needed, all of us on an individual level. I think we could all see, we had spoken about, there's certain decisions being made for us, and we can pick out, like, this decision was a good thing for me, and this is what's good about this. But this decision doesn't feel good. And how can I show up as a leader to make that change in my life?
Yes, it's interesting. It's having a conversation with my business partner wife Sharon this morning, and so she just got back some great results relative to cancer. So she's moving into a place where things are actually starting to look good. There's all kinds of signs of clear, and it's early days, but it's from a feedback perspective, it's awesome. And in talking about this type of thing, and it's in talking about the ups and downs that go on with life, in my particular situation, with Sharon having being treated for cancer, as well as growing the business and all the stuff that's going on with the pandemic. There is a language that is more. It's not meant to be chauvinistic. I'm just actually talking about more of a yin bias to it, and there's a more yang bias to it. A yang language, which is a male language, is information centric. You said this word. I have an understanding of what that word means. So when I'm listening and talking man to man, we're listening to the words being exchanged. When a man's talking to a woman, and the woman is actually, in my experience, the woman has actually got a filter that's more heart-centered. So it's a focus more on the energy associated with the word. And every word and every metaphor dances on the scale of consciousness. Love being a high metaphor, and it's a high vibrational frequency. Hate being something that's actually really low, just to give this absolute scale. And so Sharon, when I couldn't follow what she was saying, she says, "Shut, like, stop cutting me off. Just listen and feel what it is I'm saying through your heart." So I kind of dropped down, and I couldn't distinguish the specific information she was sharing with me, because that's what I was filtering for, because I really wanted to understand what she was saying, understand at the intellect level. But what I was able to do is actually recognize, okay, so when I look at a painting, I'm a painter and I'm a musician, I'm as well as business consultant. I paint by feel. So I couldn't tell you that blue goes with yellow, like from an information standpoint. There's like, whatever, but paint what you feel. So when you hear me, honey, talking about this thing with a rather, forceful energy, the forceful energy comes from my frustration because I can't find the words. I can't find the information component to connect the dots with you. So we have this challenge in our world right now where we're just waking up, which is actually a good challenge. We've had it for quite some time, and I've been doing this kind of work for a while. So the challenge has been there always. Is there's a need for a whole society to become more heart-centered. So I was watching a video you shared with me, Simon. I can't remember Simon's last name. Simon DeGroot was talking about being a great video, and he was talking about bringing out the female component as well as the male component, and he is both of those. We're all both both, because we're streaming the whole. And the idea being is that what we want to do is we want to be more heart-centered, and then we want to be more in the pocket relative to an energy signature that's typically a high signature, and then find information to wrap around that so that we can actually navigate our world. But up until this point in history, there's not been a lot of emphasis on heart-centered or heart-centric, or as what they say at Heart Math is heart coherence.
Heart coherence. That's exactly it. The heart coherence, I believe, this is the way we must evolve. We all as a society need to awaken to this. This is the awakening. This is our awakening, and our chance at surviving on the planet is to move into our hearts and understand the power of heart coherence and the synergy of heart coherence. And when we're each in that space, we really can kind of surrender to the natural rhythm of life, and meet people in the most synchronistic way, and really create coherence and harmony and balance on the planet. And it starts within, like we say with everything starts within first. And this concept of unity, and I'm just going to read Vicky's. Sadly, the women who are let in have to behave very masculine, and that, yes, they have in the past to fit in order to play by the rules, and have lost their unique balance, right? And so I've been talking about on my podcast, because unity consciousness is something that has been so fascinating for me and really resonated with this understanding, like we really are all connected. And I used to think that like we all had to be unified out there, like we all have to get along in order for anything to happen, which is true, but it has to start inside first. We have to collect all of our fragmented parts of ourselves and all the parts of ourselves that we've neglected or let go from staying in the head, right? So just the simplicity of integrating our masculine and feminine sides of ourselves and really coming to unity inside. And then that becomes a place where we are truly just leading by example, right? And facilitating that space for other people to find that as well. But we can't do it without getting in touch with our empathic nature and allowing ourselves to feel the extremes of emotions. Even as we say, when you go into the swamp, we find our superpower. And it really is love.
Like everything is love, and you constantly remind me, Sarah, that money is love. Like money is just coalesced love. It's information plus energy vibrating within a frequency. It's all love. And to Vicky's point earlier about women up to this point in history have had to be very masculine to actually get on that hierarchy, because the structure of business in particular, not just business, government, organizations, like law, everybody has been this top down. And this by design has meant to actually go and lock in the heart component, but then the unconscious bias where people start to act kind of all off the rails. So the structure has evolved as a top-down control, patriarchal. Let's actually go and direct the type of behavior we want, reward it with big bonuses, and let's actually punish the type of behavior and contain the type of behavior we don't want. So that what we're facing right this second on the planet is all of the structures, pretty like 99.99999% of all the structures in business and government, in organizations, profit, not for profit, they've been designed to actually push forward a head-centric mandate. And so when you actually come in from a heart orientation and you put yourself in that structure informs behavior. So it becomes really difficult, and the structures are now falling apart. Now, if they all fall apart entirely, we're all in really bad shape. So we have to actually bridge from the old way to the new way, which is good news. There's a bunch of us who are actually responsible for that bridging. And if you are gifted in an understanding of what's going on the planet right now, you'll start to recognize your role as what we call a lightning bolt catcher. So in Japan, they call these individuals, like it's the tall poppy syndrome. If in fact you want to actually last in this hierarchy, you have to fit in. So you can't be the tall poppy because they cut your head off. Like that's the Japanese version of that. And right now, what we've got going on is we have tall poppies who are actually catching the flack and the energy from other individuals, from themselves, and from just every place. And so you have to learn as a lightning bolt catcher to catch lightning, but allow yourself to ground it. And that's a phenomena that you have to actually think of it as a transformation yourself as being a complex living system. It's not so much flesh and blood. It's not the physical as the priority, but we're a complex living system. And as a complex living system, what we're made up of is information plus energy vibrating within a bandwidth frequency. And those who are high bandwidth, they have the responsibility to ground everybody else. So they're going to be lightning bolt catchers. Mm-hmm. The fascinating thing with lightning comes from above. It comes from below as well. Actually, lightning actually is a combination of, it comes from the top. In the world, it comes from the top, and it also comes from the ground, and it meets in the middle. And when you get coherence happening in the system, you get chain lightning through the whole system. So as a lightning bolt catcher, the beautiful metaphor that starts to present itself is, as a lightning bolt catcher, you light up the world. So we've talked about wake up, to show up, to light up, to flow. The last phase, which is light up, is to be a lightning bolt catcher as a metaphor for being an empath, as well as a conduit, as well as whatever, clairvoyant, clair essence, clair, I don't know all the words of clair.
We are multidimensional.
Right, we're multidimensional.
We are multidimensional. That's something that can never be taken away from us. However, like we talk about in the education system, and also we like to do this as the diagram.
Yeah.
The top down, you can also think of the metaphor as like push down emotions and push down our multidimensional nature.
Yep.
That we even are empathic, and that we do have this claircognizance and all these senses and abilities beyond just what we see with our physical senses, and to really understand how we work in the world from this multidimensional space. And I believe that this is what we are all learning as a result of this crisis. The ones who have been working on this and awakening, we use the word sweet spot, where we're finding our sweet spot and feeling really empowered to step into the space of who we are. And once we do that, we find our own heart coherence. We start to find other people who have the same is going off there of why are we here? We are here to make great change in this time.
Yes, we are.
This is a part of as Vicky says, love that collected all of our fragmented parts. And that's certainly what I've been finding in this time with what's going on. It's a lot of things are making sense in my life. And there was a period where I was kind of too much in my feminine and didn't have that fiery passion to stand against something. So it was, even for me, like this was something that was needed to kick me into action in terms of, okay, yes, I am here. I am here to be just a light. Even if we, are, like we said, we have heavy hearts today, it's still to be that light and to be comfortable to talk about it in these times, because this is how we grow together.
Yeah, somebody yesterday was sharing with me that how we grow, a metaphor for how we grow is to get our heart broken, and so that there's actually more room for light to come in and more room for light to be expressed through our heart. And it's painful, and it's also one of those things that I can speak to. Years ago was one of those things I do every freaking thing I possibly could to avoid it. Because I was fairly clear that having my heart broken was the equivalent of some version of death, and and in my male aspect of my humanness, I was pretty clear that was not a good idea. And then you introduce a bunch of women into business, who actually are much more comfortable through. I mean, I'm speaking in generality, but they're much more comfortable with the heart space. And I always experienced all these fantastic relationships with my seniors and also my team members and those who reported to me, especially the women or the men who are more yin oriented, because that's just I was comfortable. I'm a singer songwriter artist as well as an accountant and whatever math guy. And I'm kind of left brain, right brain, which also sounds like a really exciting thing until you're actually out there as a pioneer for a long period of time. And it wasn't particularly cool way back when. Actually, it really wasn't cool. I remember getting told I wore burgundy pants to the office down in Bay Street in Toronto on the financial district. Nice. And they actually sent me home to actually say, you know what, that's a little bit too whatever. We'd rather that you actually do with, charcoal gray is good, black is good, and maybe dark blue.
Yeah, well, and we have so many reasons to build these armors around our heart. Like you said, heartbreak, losing someone, like it is painful. Yeah. And I've had the similar story like I shared where I had my heart closed. So you literally can't feel the truth energy behind the relationships that you're attracting into your life. And there's a part of a mechanism about that as well. Like, oh, I don't want to get too close to this person because I might lose them. And it's just such a twisted way of living. Right. And
it makes a hell of a lot of sense if you don't want to get your heart broken.
Yeah. But then you end up getting your heart broken anyway, because
exactly.
You think
you don't have a heart to be open. So it just feels crappy all the time. It's like this dried up prune.
Yes.
And you go, wow, I'm doing pretty well. I got my dried up prune and I've got my, whatever, millions of dollars. And so I'm great, which is what we've had as leaders in, again, in big business, in politics, and that is changing. Like I'm thinking some of the bigger businesses are actually welcoming women and they're trying to actually get more diversity on the boards as well as the executive level. But I think this particular pandemic crisis is the opportunity to have our hearts broken open collectively, and then being able to recognize the benefit of being more heart-centric, which then starts us, as soon as we move from head-centric to heart-centric, then it moves us into the potential for heart coherence.
Yes.
And we can't, like, there is no other way of getting there.
That's right. And that heart coherence brings us into our true multidimensionality, where there is no linear timeline, and it's this quantum space. I was watching the one of the Avenger movies. I think it was the latest one, and they're talking about that phenomena of the quantum and being able to, really make powerful change, which is the essence, which this network is about, is the internal network effect, right? So going within, finding, if we each individually, even in our own homes, find that space inside of ourselves, we can quantum leap and create new realities if we have our focus in that space, versus, again, from the head thinking, how are we going to get ourselves out of this? Well, as Einstein says, you can't solve a problem at the same level it was created. And this is our jump point in evolution.
Yep, this is it, baby. We all signed up for this.
Yes, we did. And to be able to really appreciate and honor, like, what a powerful time for us to be here.
Oh yeah. And it is interesting. Just because I'm just looking at our time here, is one of the things that we adopted this just as a function of working with companies and helping them understand that we tend to unconsciously bias towards fear. And we do that by actually scanning our environment with our head and looking for what's wrong with this situation. Where's the problem? Where's the problem that I can fix? And the ego mind goes around and around and around and around and around a circle forever. And we feel like we're doing, a great job and we're working really hard. And it's the work ethic that we're trying to honor. And that's what the structure is trying to help us do. But rather than actually ask ourselves, what's wrong with this, what we teach people to do is actually move into their executive center by asking what's good about this rather than what's wrong with this. And so you move from the back here to up here. And then as soon as you move from back here to up here, all of a sudden what's open to you is you can actually now drop to your heart. If you're back here, it's It's like that. There's no pathway direct from the back, the reptilian brain, straight to the heart. You have to actually move from here to here and then down here. So what's good about this pandemic? There's much more love. We've got less pollution. We have people realizing that they want to stay at home more. They want to have, not all the time they're actually doing the transportation. We have honoring the healthcare workers, and not just the healthcare workers, but the people working in grocery chains, all of the frontline people. And then there's shining a really bright light on the idea that those people who are out there risking right now to keep this whole economy working, they're the lowest paid individuals in the whole economy, and they're keeping the whole economy running. That is, for me, such a fantastic metaphor to look at what's needed in terms of a shift from a top down to a bottom up, and I could go forever.
I was just going to say, what's good about this is we're all having the chance to ask the question, what is essential?
Yeah. What's this all about?
What is essential for our joy and our health and our well-being on this planet? Coming back to that, putting our value and honor to that. And that's how we create.
That's how we create, baby.
That's how we create, baby. Well, thank you so much. This was Tim and I were like, with our heavy hearts, thinking we might ball this whole episode. We did good. High five.
High five.
So,
exactly.
Not that there would be anything wrong with balling on a.
No, exactly. Not there's anything wrong.
Not that there's anything wong. We are encouraging this.
Yes, but it's yeah. As
so
but as
to be able to have a conversation.
Yeah, as a talk track, it's not all that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, join us next week where we'll talk about another thing to do with flow.
Excellent.
Oh, I gotta get my video. I'm not prepared. Hold on. We gotta put our outro video and
okay.
over and out.
Over and out.